New fallout from the president's healthcare overhaul, which was based on a critical network of state-run exchanges. That's the online site that would help you choose the plan that you want. Somebody has to set that up, and somebody has to go through it, and somebody has to see what you put on there, how old you are, what your medical background is, and then figure out what plan you might be available for and how much it would cost you. All that takes, bodies and resources and so on. And the states were supposed to do it. But now, the majority of states are saying they're not going to do it, or at a minimum, they want to partner with the federal government to do it. So there's a whole lot more work here for Uncle Sam than they ever anticipated when they passed this bill and when they funded this bill. Where does that leave us today? Leslie Marshall is a syndicated radio talk show host and a Fox News contributor, and Lars Larson is a syndicated radio host with Compass Media Networks. So it's kind of confusing, but the feds are the ones saying we're going to subsidize health insurance for the people who can't afford it, but the states have to set up. I said before, it's sort of like an Orbitz, where you just go online, you say, okay, Megyn Kelly, New York, how old are you? You can look it up. Medical background, race, they ask you sort of all your, background things. You plug in your information. Then somebody has to be on the receiving, somebody first has to set up the online thing and then be on the receiving end to process the info such that they can return back to you, all right, you qualify for the gold plan at this rate. This is the amount of subsidy you would get, and here's how you go about getting it. Well, 25 states have defaulted to the feds entirely on this, and another 7 say, well, we want at a minimum to partner with the feds. So now you got 32 states who are saying the federal government is going to be entirely or at least partially responsible for doing it, and they didn't plan on that when they set it up, Leslie. So who's going to pay for that, and how are they going to get this done?
Well, I think the money's already there, actually, Megyn. And what I hear is job creation, whether it's on a state level or a federal level.
No, they did not budget for this. Wait, they did not budget for this. There were reports early on that they were talking now about sort of robbing Peter to pay Paul, like taking it out of a different budget of the feds and then using that money. And it could be, $1 billion plus, then using that money to set these up.
But the money that they did plan on was money that they would appropriate to each state. And I'm assuming here now, okay, this is clearly an assumption, that they would not be appropriating as much to a state that's going to say the federal government has to handle the setup of that Orbitz, healthcare Orbitz, entirely. What I'm also hearing are people that said on the right, like my buddy Lars, who we're going to hear from in a minute. I can't wait.
Thank you.
What I hear is, we want less federal government. Oh, but you guys handle this. We want power to go to the states. And the states say, we can't handle this? Come on.
Well, I mean, the states weren't the ones who passed Obamacare, though, Leslie. I mean, the states,
Nope.
This was a federal effort, and they were told by the feds, you're doing it.
But we did
Megyn,
hear
this thing's
from
a mess.
Mitt Romney, a guy named Mitt Romney, Lars, that said the reason it worked in Massachusetts and the reason when he was governor he signed off on it and wanted it is because it was a state-run program. This is at least a portion of the power and the implementation given to the various states.
Go ahead, Lars.
Megyn, this thing has been a disaster. It was a disaster as Romneycare in Massachusetts, but you hit on one of the answers. If Orbitz had set this up, if private industry had done it, or Quote Smith, or any of the others where you can compare insurance and do it apples to apples, it would have been done better. They never would have set up a separate Orbitz for every state in America. That's the way the federal government does things. And the fact is, an awful lot of Americans, and as you point out, the majority of American states oppose this plan. Further, the exchanges are a little ridiculous because they're only going to deal with people who obtain their health insurance not from the government, so not Medicaid, not Medicare, and not from their employer, which is the majority of the rest of the people not covered by Medicaid and Medicare. Those people who have to buy it individually will go to these exchanges. Except in most exchanges, you can buy the expensive airline ticket or you can buy the first class, the inexpensive airline ticket. This isn't going to give you that choice because Obamacare mandates that the minimum plan is actually already a Cadillac plan. So how much choice are you going to have when the federal government says this is the least you can offer, which is everything into the plan kind of offering.
But that speaks to whether Obamacare is good or bad or adequate or inadequate, and that ship has sailed. I mean, the law passed. So now this is a question of whether this is going to be adequately implemented, whether it can adequately be implemented by the feds when they were not planning to be, I like that, what you said, healthcare orbits. They were not planning to run healthcare orbits. They were planning to have
well, but they were.
State-run
Megyn, they were
healthcare
because
orbits.
they were funding it. They were funding it, and let me point something else out.
Funding it is different than having the bodies to set up the website and do the processing and say, okay, this age, this kind of a smoker, this kind of an alcohol intake, this kind of a family history. I mean, that takes people and resources that we don't have right now.
Megyn, Megyn, there was already something for other kinds of insurance called QuoteSmith, where you could go and find quotes on other kinds of insurance. If private industry had done this, we would have seen competition, and I don't mean just in the kind of plan offered. You would have seen the private industry step to the fore. They have with Craigslist, they have with eBay, they have with Orbitz and Travelocity and all those other things that offer other kinds of products that are A, complicated, B, expensive, and where people want choices between, do I want the first class ticket, do I want the cheap hotel, and those kinds of things could have been done by private industry. But there's another wrinkle that only an Albany law graduate would be able to figure out, Megyn, and that is, in the federal law, it provided that if you go to a state exchange and you need that subsidy from the federal government to help you buy your insurance, the law allows for a check to be cut. If it's through the federal exchange, the law appears to have a flaw in it that does not allow the federal government to cut checks. Now, again, it's a legal technicality, and they may iron it out, but that's a real problem for those 30-some states that have chosen not to.
There's another challenge unfolding along those lines as well that has to do with whether they can tax. You know how you're supposed to pay a penalty if you don't insure your employees? Yep. These corporations, if they have more than 50 employees, they have to pay a penalty if they don't insure them. And now there's another legal challenge that's bubbling up about whether that provision of the law can be sustained if the exchanges are run by the feds versus the states. I don't want to get that deep into it because your head will explode. But this wrinkle has opened up a whole new possible challenge to the core of the law. But the question I have for today is, where are they going to get the money, Leslie? Where are they going to get that extra money? And is the cost of this law ballooning in a way that was not anticipated, at least by some?
I don't believe so, and for several reasons. One, again, I do feel that the money that would be appropriated, let's say, here in California, and we say, hey, you guys handle it, well, they're not going to give us the money for that because we're not going to be handling that. So I don't see the issue with finances. And Lars, to your point about the insurance companies, all those big CEOs at Aetna and Blue Cross, etc. You weren't going to mention hubby's a doctor, so I will. I can tell you, Lars, they had the power before this was passed, and they still have the power to lower their rates. So it amuses me
Megyn,
when they sit there and they say Obamacare is going to increase rates that they have 100% control over, sitting at the heads of their individual private companies.
To her point, actuaries tell you what those policies have to cost, the marketplace and the real cost of doing it. And the fact is that you're going to see an awful lot of states that don't want to do this because it doesn't make sense.
Don't ever say actuaries here again.
Don't have any actuaries.
With all due respect to actuaries, don't ever do that again. All right, thank you both so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Megyn.